7:30 tonight. It's the big one. It's Republic of Ireland against England. It's the second game in this qualification campaign for Ireland. Of course, they were beaten 1-0 in Metz on Friday night by France. So it's a second opportunity to try and get one step closer to Switzerland tonight. It is the girls on the ball derby. You'll be familiar with Rachel O'Sullivan, who's often been with us on the show. Delighted to welcome Sophie Downey to the show for the first time, or on the breakfast show for the first time anyway.
On the first time, yeah.
How's Dublin been treating you so far?
Very good. Always does treat me very well. But yeah, I love the city, and we had a bit of an explore yesterday, even though it was raining.
Yes, that is the one thing. You just have to kind of go to the pub and accept the pub is going to be the only place where you can plan to do anything because of the outside situation.
Yeah, you just don't come for the weather. You just it's just a factor. Bring an umbrella, job done.
Can I ask you guys about Girls on the Ball? When it first started up, why it started up, and how things are going with it?
Yeah, we started 12 years ago. This is our 12th year, off the back of the Olympics. So I'd moved over to London and had the 2012 Olympics, and we went to see Team GB against Brazil at Wembley. 70,000 people, unbelievable atmosphere. You know, we always talk about the Steph Houghton goal. It was 1-0, Team GB beat Brazil, and like the roar of the crowd, and at a women's football match we'd never experienced before. So came home, wanted to know more, wasn't really anything out there. So we just started a little website, decided to tweet some live games, started going to domestic games, started doing England games, and it kind of just took off from there. We ran it for 9 years alongside our day jobs. And then 3 years ago we went full time.
Nice. Was it always the national team that sort of led the way, Sophie, especially when it came to England and I guess in that instance Team GB?
I think so. With women's football that's the case because the leagues are kind of catching up. It's always, I think, that Ghana's interest is the international sides and the national teams, and I think especially when you think about the step changes within the game across all of Europe, it's those international tournaments, right, or those big international games that really garner attention. But I think for us it was just, you know, we had that experience at the Olympics where that was a real catalyst in terms of the change that the way that the game was perceived certainly in England, and the interest that garnered. And then going back into the league, and the league was developing, and within 3 or 4 years became fully professional, and so that was a massive wave of kind of everything going in the right direction. So we just kind of went along with that, I think, in terms of our interest in the domestic game as well, and getting to know all of the players that played in the league. And I think, you know, from then to now it's changed so much. There wasn't even a broadcaster really back in those days showing games. We got a game once a month, I think, on TV, whereas now you can see every single game in the WSL every week.
And was the decision 3 years ago to go full-time, was it kind of sudden, or was this a long time coming?
We knew we wanted to do it. We didn't know how we wanted to do it or how it was going to look. COVID actually helped. Yeah. So there was some weird positives from COVID. You know, we ended up having major tournaments back to back. You know, had England made the Olympics, we would have had the 2021 Olympics, the Euros, the World Cup and Olympics, a Euros, and we kind of thought if it doesn't work now for us, it'll never work. Right. So we took the leap, probably planned it doing it a different way, and it ended working out not necessarily the way we planned. We got an agent, which massively helped, and it was just, I think we said we'd just say yes to everything for the first kind of 2-3 years. We're still doing that. And it's gone, every season's gone better and better from strength to strength, and I don't think we probably expected it. We've been very lucky with the way women's football has gone, you know. Yeah. For England to win the Euros, like, massively helped in terms of the growth of the game as well. And because we're full-time now, it means I get to see more of Ireland, which is even better again, because that's where I'd struggle. You know, I know we kind of did a lot of the Lionesses stuff, but, you know, it was this stuff of the weekends we could do more of around our jobs, and then we'd be doing kind of all sorts of mad business, flying around trying to catch the international games. So I'm glad it's our full-time jobs now, because we can spread ourselves a bit more. Yeah,
I'm always so interested in people that take that leap, because there was a moment 3 years ago where you both woke up and you were full-time podcasters, and then you get up out of bed and it's like, here you go. Yeah.
Yeah, the first few months where, we actually talked about this yesterday, where you're a bit like, God, we've only got like 1 or 2 weekly jobs. You know, the first 3 months of the season, September to December, was a bit like that, wasn't it?
It's a bit scary, because you're like, what have we done? But then it's just that leap of faith, right? And by Christmas, it kind of all came into life, and it just we haven't looked back in that respect.
Is there a moment when you realise, yes, this has actually worked out, we've made it, or has it just been a constant growth and a very gradual thing? We
still like have those moments when we're in a big stadium full of people. I think for us, it was really weird walking down Wembley Way, the final of the Euros. was 10 years to the day of Team GB against Brazil at Wembley.
Right.
So that was a bit of a full circle moment for us, I think. And the Euros was really funny because it was our first major tournament working, both of us working it. So normally we did major tournaments as fans in the stands together, experienced all the highs and lows together. But she was in a press box, I was pitch side with my camera. And, you know, we'd have these moments during the Euros when something would happen and we'd meet out in the car park after the match and, like, have a bit of a celebration and then go back and do our respective jobs. But I think that was one of them, probably.
Yeah, I think for me, the Euros, obviously, you know, me being English, England winning it was super special. But then also the whole World Cup experience and being out at a major tournament like that in a completely different country and everything from the opener between Ireland and Australia to the final, and just going, there were lots of pinch me moments and going, this is incredible, you know, we've just worked a World Cup final, or we've just worked a World Cup opener in front of a stadium of so many people. I think, I don't think it will ever get old.
No, and I know a lot of the Irish players talk about that, standing in the tunnel before the Australia game. For me, it was getting out of the Uber the morning of, down near the Rocks in Sydney, and hearing the Fields of Athenry from about 3 or 4 streets over.
Wow.
And, you know, we were going to find fans. It was easy with the Irish because you could just hear them, like,
you.
and that was a pinch me moment where I was like, Ireland have made it. Do you know, that kind of way? And that was special because I've obviously been on this Lioness journey for so long and seen them take these strides. And for me to then be in the Scotland game, be at that moment in the World Cup, was like, oh, good, we're catching up now as well, which is cool.
It's funny you say that, because the memory I have of it, even from an off the ball perspective, is Kathleen McNamee outside the stadium Australia for the first game, and she did an amazing monologue about what it means, and like Ireland have worked so hard to get there, and it sounds like you were almost getting out of the Uber in the background as Kathleen was doing that. Like, I'd say, like, I'm conscious, people probably watching and listening who probably want to start their own podcast, and I wonder, like, what advice you'd give, and like, does it need a kind of a dynamic like you two have, that maybe there's strengths and weaknesses that you both cover each other? How do people get going in that aspect?
We definitely have strengths and weaknesses because, like, we don't just podcast. In fact, everyone called us a podcast for years, and we only started a podcast at the World Cup because we were like, well, everyone thinks to do one, so we may as well start a podcast. So I co-host one. You do stuff with The Guardian. Now we do one together, but we do a lot of other things. And I think we do help with each other's strengths and weaknesses, don't we?
I think that's the important thing, though, because women's football is still pretty young in its journey, right? So I don't think if you're thinking of starting out, you can just narrow yourself down to one thing. You have to kind of be kind of multifaceted. The fact that I write, you do photography as well, we both do podcasting, it kind of, it's just not in the place where you can just focus on the one thing yet. So, but also that builds the strings to your bow. I think it's quite good because maybe, you know, in a couple of years' time, we do just do one thing, just podcast or whatever it might be. But we've got all of that experience that we've gathered and built the business around, I guess, so that people know that we've got many different strings to those bows. I
think as well what's nice about the game being new is that people want to help. So, like, there's a lot of people who are really passionate about the game and they're not in it for the money, they're not in it for any of that kind of thing, they're in it because they love the game. So if you're starting out and you've questions, people are often really willing to kind of chat to you about it and give you advice.
Yeah, it's a great thing when people want to help themselves and help the sport, and I guess whether it's through interview requests or coming on the podcast or whatever it is, it seems like it's a fairly collaborative thing. I did want to ask you, we'll start with this, Sophie. There was a tweet when the draw came out, I think it was from The Guardian, and it said, England drawn in group of death with France and Sweden. Full stop. What is the view in England of this Ireland team, and how much or how little they contribute to the deathly nature of this group?
I think it really varies, right? So if someone like me who's very attuned to Ireland and the progress of the women's football team over here and what it's meant in every step of those journeys, and I'd say quite a few people who are involved very closely in women's football understand that journey, and, you know, what we saw out in Australia, kind of the way that, I know the results maybe didn't go Ireland's way, but the way that they challenged Australia and Canada and Nigeria in every single game, and the kind of fight that they put up. I'd say no one is underestimating them that are close to the game. I think it's more of the broader football audience where you maybe don't think of, it's kind of, it's focused on those three nations that are in the top 10, right? And actually it's not really understanding, you know, the fight that Ireland can put up in games, and the kind of resilience and defensive solidity, but also the attacking threats that they do have, and you have to be super wary of.
It's very interesting. It kind of feels that Ireland have now got to adapt to a whole different situation and a whole different style of play, essentially, given they smashed everybody in League B, and now in League A they're going to be the underdog in every single game. Like, I guess we need to accept that this is going to take a few games for us to appreciate and get to grips with this underdog mentality.
Yeah, but I also think, like, God forbid we don't win a game. If we're losing 1-0 or 2-1 against top nations in the world, that's huge progress. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of have to put it into a wider context. You can't just look at it and go, oh, we've come bottom of the group, typical. Like, you're up against, I mean, the rankings have changed since the groups come out. They're higher ranked, England, they're higher now in the world.
They're second, right?
Yeah. So I actually think that underdog mentality is really important to Irish teams in sport. It's generally what we are, and I think if they can learn to deliver on, and I think Australia have really well prepared them for this, if you can deliver on those big moments against those big opposition, it massively improves your resilience, but also your belief in the squad. And I think there's a huge amount of belief in this squad, and I think particularly coming up against in England, I know all the English press talk about Katie McCabe, but a lot of the girls play over in England, and they come up against these girls week in, week out. They know where the weaknesses are, they know where the threats are, and I think sometimes that's not really considered either. And I think maybe underestimating the importance of this fixture for Irish people is maybe something that's underestimated rather than the actual football on the pitch.
Yeah, because I was saying earlier on the top of the show, we were talking about this game tonight, and my worry was that McCabe was going to try to take on too much herself, which I thought she did at times in the World Cup, because obviously she's a star player and plays at the highest level, that she'll just go out of her way to try and single-handedly get something from this game. Is that a concern that you share?
Yeah, a little bit. I hope she can kind of keep a little bit on the emotion. Like, we like a riled up Katie McCabe to an extent, but she is so important to this team that you need her to be able to rein in. If Chloe Kelly comes on that wing, or Lauren Hemp, we don't need to be seeing some of the stuff we've had to deal with over in the WSL. But I think she'll be hugely important to getting the team up to her level. I think as well, given the way England's set up, McCabe's going to be looking at that team and say that right back areas where there's going to be space. She doesn't actually need to do everything across the pitch. If she focuses on that right back area and exploiting
Lucy Brands, right?
Yeah, exploiting that space, she can do enough damage from her position alone. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like she needs to go off around the pitch and try and take on everybody's roles. I think she can do enough damage if she focuses on that.
I would also just add, it's the beauty of the structure of this competition, because the whole aim for Ireland was to get into League A. League B in Nations League gave you the chance to kind of score those goals and go out and play that kind of attacking football that you hadn't had the chance maybe to do at the World Cup because of the opposition that they came up against. It gave you Ireland a chance to play that kind of football. Now they're going to have to go back maybe to thinking more defensively. But whatever happens in this group, you've still got a hugely good chance of getting to the Euros because of the way that the playoff system works. So even if it doesn't work out that the top two, Ireland don't get into the top two, the fact that playoff system is then playing League C, which is massively in your favour in that terms, I think it's just a really good way of enabling teams like up-and-coming teams like Ireland, because Ireland are still an up-and-coming team, to give them that ability to play the top 10 in the world, but also try what they can against them without feeling too fearful of the outcome and the fact that you'll be relegated, because that's not the way it's going to work.
Well, look, from an Irish perspective, there's hope tonight, but there's understandable trepidation. I was wondering, Sophie, where do you think Ireland can hurt England tonight?
I think what Rachel said about Katie McCabe down that left side, I think that's interesting. I think what we've seen with England in recent months and maybe at the game on Friday was kind of England aren't as defensively solid as maybe they were during the Euros or during the World Cup, and something like a Megan Campbell throw could cause massive problems.
We saw that against France, didn't we? She came out at half time, the danger there.
And because England's backliners have to shift around quite a lot in recent months, with Millie Bright being out, with Leah Williamson now coming back in, having been out for over a year, and the relationships aren't quite as smooth as maybe they once were because of that shifting around and still trying to figure out those defensive aspects. So something like a Megan Campbell throw that really does cause defences to really worry. It seems to confuse defences a lot about how to react to that second ball. I think that could be a real advantage.
It does look like Mary Earps isn't going to be playing tonight, so the numbers 1 to 11 have been submitted to UEFA by England to get named 1 to 11, as I say, and they usually do stick to those numbers going by the last few games, Emma's saying here. So Hannah Hampton is named at number 1. How big a loss is that? I mean, there's just depth all over for England at the moment.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think Wiegman would see it as a loss. I think she's probably picked Hampton for her distribution.
Okay, right.
So I think it's a tactical thing as opposed to it being seen as a loss. Hannah Hampton is one of her best attributes is her distribution. I do find it interesting that she's made that shift. It is always a big call changing your goalkeeper.
Yeah.
The last game Hannah Hampton played was the Continental Cup final against Arsenal, and her distribution wasn't at the top level. For whatever reason, she was just having a slightly off game. So, she could be seriously performing in training, but I think it will be a tactical decision to bring her in.
So it's just to go through the 1 to 11 as it's named here. So it's Hampton, Bronze Carter, Williamson, Greenwood, Ciara Walsh, Jess Park, Ella Toone, Lauren James, Russo, Hemp. 4-3-3?
Yeah.
And interesting that we thought Park might come in instead of Georgia Stanway on a podcast I was on yesterday. I thought that would be an area that England could benefit from, having someone like a Jess Park in that position. So for her to start is interesting. For Ella Toone to start is interesting as well.
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing with Hannah Hampton is that if Ireland will play a low block like they have been doing, I think it's trying to bypass that block, right? And trying to, rather than trying to play through it, play over it a bit. And when you have the wingers like Lauren Hemp able to run it at people and get into that spaces, that's probably the thinking around that. Which is maybe not Mary Earps' best attributes. It's trying to really work out. I think England at times have been caught on the hop a bit sometimes against when they can't quite figure out how to break people down tactically. We saw that against Sweden on Friday. They didn't quite get the solutions right. So this is probably Sarina Wiegman's thinking, is trying to completely bypass the kind of midfield area because it's going to be so congested.
But that's the hope from an Irish perspective, isn't it? Because the defensive solidity was there to see on Friday night against France, and they frustrated the French at times. Like, a lot of it to do with Courtney Brosnan, but it was good defending overall. Rachel, I was wondering your perspective on Ireland's ball retention. It's something that we really need to improve, don't we? Like, against France, just couldn't keep the ball.
Yeah, but you would expect that against France. It's going to be the same against England. It's something Eileen Gleeson spoke about, that England are known for having the ball a lot, 60 to 70%. It was the same against Sweden. Sweden had 39% possession, I think. Possession is great if you could do something with it. We always talk about, for example, how great Spain is. Spain always have the ball. If you're not breaking down low blocks and putting the ball in the back of the net, and I think if Ireland are comfortable out of possession, that's how they're going to have to win it, rather than trying to play England at their own game.
Just the few times that they do get the ball, that's the thing.
This is it, the quality there. And I think actually then having that League B under their belt means hopefully when they do get those fewer chances, they're going to be a bit more clinical because they've had more experience in those moments. So that's what I'm hoping to take from League B.
I didn't get the whole game. I only watched the highlights of Sweden-England, but it did seem that the biggest threat was Rolfo and Blacksenius getting in behind the England defence just with their sheer pace. Is that basically it? Is that the long and short of what Sweden did to cause England problems, or what did they actually do?
They had a really aggressive press in midfield, right. So they targeted Ciara Walsh massively, and it kind of made her play. It got her out of the game. She wasn't England were loose in possession. They weren't at their best, so there's things for England to fix in that respect. But Sweden got their game plan spot on, and the way they targeted, Ciara Walsh and then one of the centre backs. It left one centre back free, but it kind of just isolated them completely. So they got their pressure spot on, and then because of the pace of those wingers, they were able to, once they turned over the ball, they were able to transition super quickly. I think also they did invert their wingers quite a lot, so they came and overcrowded the central area of the pitch. So England had a lot of space out in the width to work in, but they could never quite get it there because the central areas were so congested. So I think when you cut off England's middle area, they do struggle because England relies so much on that Ciara Walsh and her ability to be able to pass through the middle, but also spray the passes out wide. And when you do target players like that, they have a problem. And we've seen that with England even in the World Cup. People had figured out Ciara Walsh and how to kind of stop her when she was fit. And England just need to work out how to adjust to those situations.
It's an interesting one when we kind of consider how Ireland might approach this one then, because they might be able to look at what Sweden did to a certain extent. But also if we look at what Eileen Gleeson did on Friday night, I mean, Campbell and the long throws being a big part of your tactical approach and introducing her at half-time, if you want to look at this in a negative way, suggests that she wasn't really sure what she wanted to do tactically at the start of the game. Is that fair to say, or what do you think?
I think because France are obviously a really difficult team to play against, but they don't often play to the best of their ability. We expect, I think, a lot from France for the players that they have. And I'd say she probably was taking that first half to figure out what France, essentially, Ireland were coming up against. Got that early goal, probably thought, oh God, here we go. But actually holding them off for a full half. And we see that sometimes, you see it in WSL as well. If a team can hold off a really good team for the first half, you can capitalise on that second half and use your weapons rather than playing all your cards from the get-go against a team like France who can hurt you if you're going to do that. So I guess it makes sense in a way, and it's then something that the other team have to try and contend with in the second half. And they think, okay, maybe they didn't expect Megan Campbell to come on in the second half. Now that's another problem for them to solve. So I can understand the thinking behind that.
I think also with a player like Megan Campbell, who does struggle with injury quite a lot, it's about using her in the right situations at the right time rather than overloading her and putting her in from the off. And, people can get used to maybe the way that she plays with those long throws. You send her on in the second half and it gives them something else to think about, right?
Yeah. Do you expect a similar setup from Ireland with any personnel changes in the French game?
I can see it being fairly similar, to be honest, because I think England pose similar threats in terms of the width and the speed and the way that they can, in terms of possession as well. So I'd be surprised if there was a lot of changes, to be honest. I think, I think Ireland will be able to identify potential areas of weakness. It'll be how they capitalise on them.
Also, when you've got defenders like Aoife Mannion and Anna Patton, who have both played in the youth setup with England as well, so they've grown up, like Aoife Mannion grew up with Leah Williamson. They all know each other. They play in the same league, of course, but they all know each other very, very well. And I think having those kind of inside knowledge does really, really help.
Is the familiarity a spring of hope for us that they might cancel each other out?
I think it's a benefit for sure, and I think maybe it's something we've not talked about a lot. I know the English press keep talking about Katie McCabe, but like Louise Quinn was at Arsenal for a long time. There's players that are playing in the WSL against a lot of this team week in, week out, and it works both ways. But I think it probably works a little bit more in Ireland's favour because we're the underdogs. Do you know what I mean? Whereas England probably don't feel like they need those little bits of information here and there because they're not underdogs. So it could. I do think it could. It's another tool for Ireland to draw on, I think, and we're going to need it.
And also, their other top-class player is nowhere near England. So is there a sense of a secret weapon about Denise O'Sullivan tonight?
100%. No one's talked about her.
Yeah.
And I think she'll be key. Absolutely.
And like the way that she plays in that central area, how skillful she is, but also how dogged she is in terms of the way that she disrupts play. I think they'll be aware of her, but because she plays in the NWSL as well, it's kind of a distant league where it's played quite early in the morning, so they won't probably get as much information about her, as I imagine, as you might do if you played against her every week.
And if you focus too much on Katie McCabe, it's going to leave space elsewhere. And Heather Payne has been playing well with Everton, so I think there'll be opportunities. But the key thing will be Ireland being that switched on for 90 minutes at the back. Like they were against France. They just need to do that again for another 90 minutes.
Give us a prediction. How's it going to go tonight?
You're nervous.
I'm really nervous.
I think England will win, but I think Ireland will score, and I think it'll be tight. So if it's a 2-1 to England or a draw, I'd be pretty happy with that.
I'm nervous not because I don't think England can, I know the quality that they have within the squad, but I do think everything surrounding the occasion tonight is huge, and I think it's bigger for Ireland. It's considered bigger. The emotion of it is absolutely huge for Ireland, right? Playing at the Aviva, playing England at the Aviva, having 30,000 plus fans behind you, and England might not think about that side of things so much, but I think it will really energise the Irish side, and that's where I worry most, because you have to be amped up for these games, right? You have to be at the right energetic levels as well as the right quality levels, and I do sometimes worry that maybe that emotional side isn't quite there.
Which means Ireland will win?
I don't know.
She's terrible at predicting.
I'm very bad at predicting. I get very nervous, but I do think Ireland can score, that's for sure.
Okay, well, the Aviva will go wild. Certainly they go 1-0 up, and then it's just about take the ball to the corner flag.
Just for 87 minutes.
And that would give England a different problem, right? Because then they have to, the pressure's on to break Ireland down. And, when you have a block of 9 in front of you, it's that, because if Ireland score, that's what they will do. It's what most teams would do, right? Is they bank up.
If they keep it tight in the first half.
Don't concede early this time.
And you bring on a Megan There's all those little things that you can just pull at in that second half, it could be a completely different story. But so long as they don't let the emotion get the best of them, it's how you harness that. And I think, again, drawing on that World Cup experience would be massive.
Absolutely. It's a 7:30 kickoff this evening. It's at the Aviva. 30,000 tickets sold already before that, so it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal evening. Folks, thanks very much for popping into studio. Enjoy tonight. You are going to stay with us for just one moment because we do play our birthdays game before we wrap. But just to tell you, tomorrow morning show, we're going to be back with all the reaction to tonight's Super Tuesday of football. We've got Leinster versus La Rochelle preview, the weekend's Gaelic games being previewed, and plenty more besides. On April the 9th, it is time to say a very happy birthday to, it says God on my script here because Emma, a massive Liverpool fan, has written the script. Robbie Fowler turns what age today?
Oof.
43?
Well, no, you've given him too much credit there. He's 49.
Oh, okay.
Twilight's Kirsten Stewart is what age?
Oh, 34.
Bingo. On the money. Miranda herself, Sex and the City's Cynthia Nixon.
You watched Sex and the City, I didn't.
Years ago. 61?
58.
Sorry.
Close enough.
Sorry.
The EST WWE superstar Bianca Belair.
I have to breathe. I couldn't even hazard a guess. You go on.
Currently, I mean, I have nothing.
Nothing to draw on.
31.
35.
Oh.
And I have no idea who Bianca Belair is.
Oh, good, me neither.
And Dennis Quaid, who I do know, is what age? Big birthday.
75.
5 years younger than
70. Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah. The big 7-0 to Dennis. Happy birthday to you and to everybody else who celebrates on April the 9th. Enjoy the Republic of Ireland versus England tonight. We'll chat to you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.